Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, and just a day after I make a video discussing that Kelly Loeffler is looking to enter back into the Georgia political field to run for Senate in 2022. David Perdue officially announcing today that he will not be running for Senate in 2022 for a personal reason, not a political one. This is a Senate race that is going to be hotly contested, was very close in the 2021 runoff election. David Perdue did not actually lose the seat that's up in 2022. The seat he lost is up in 2026, but he was looking to initially run in this Georgia Senate election race. And it looks as if this is a very quick entrance and exit from the race. You see, David Perdue announced around a week ago, you can check that out at the top right corner of the screen, that he was going to be running for Senate in the state of Georgia. I also covered the fact that Kelly Loeffler had announced yesterday that she was still considering a rematch against Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock and looking at these candidates individually. Both of them were just the wrong people at the wrong time in the wrong state. Georgia has had a very strong history of voting for the GOP, but 2020 and 2021 were different. And David Perdue actually went as far, not only forming this exploration type discussion through the mainstream media, through the press, he also went so far as to file paperwork for Senate for 2022. So something must have changed. He had every intention of running. He announced that he was filing the paperwork to keep his options open, but 99% of the time when someone files paperwork, they are doing it. Because when you file that paperwork, it's assuming you are going to follow through. Why would he change just 7 days later after filing the paperwork? We don't know, but maybe we could draw some conclusions based off the recent events and who might run in 2022 and what that might mean for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins and Brian Kemp, those Republicans in the state. And you know, this article, very surprising to me because David Perdue had every intention of running, and it looks as if not even a week later, practically, I mean, he announces that he is no longer going to be even considering a run in 2022. So I honestly do want to know what happened. When he talks about it here, we can actually see exactly what he said. He said, after much prayer and reflection, Bonnie and I, Bonnie is his wife, have decided that we will not enter the race for the United States Senate in Georgia in 2022. He did not go further than that. He said that it was a personal decision, not a political one, but he did not offer really any type of explanation. And many Republicans that previously supported Perdue wanted him to run again. Because honestly, as someone who was ousted in 2021, if 2022 ended up being a red wave year, I think he would still have trouble, but it was not out of the question for Perdue to win in 2022. But he does promise that he will make sure a Republican will defeat Raphael Warnock in the Senate election in 2022. He adds that there are two current liberal United States senators. He actually said radical liberals in one statement before, talking about the two senators, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, from the state of Georgia. And, you know, looking at the results from the 2021 runoff election, I can see why the GOP would not want to run him again, but I also could see how easily he could enter into the primary and win just based off name recognition. Politically speaking, I don't think Perdue or Loeffler should be the Republican nominee, but it wasn't completely out of the question for them to win. I don't think it was likely, but in a red wave type of 2010-2014 scenario, it could have been possible. But, you know, looking at David Perdue as a person, I think that this is just very coincidental to say the least, that the day after we see a report that Kelly Loeffler is going to be re-involving herself in Georgia politics and possibly run for Senate in 2022, that David Perdue announces he is not going to run. And you see, his name has actually been in this speculation page for quite some time. Only today was he added into the declined column. But Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler were the two people that were characterized as publicly expressed interest, and David Perdue was actually the only candidate, the only Republican so far who has filed paperwork, major Republican when I say that, has filed paperwork to run for Senate. But he has changed his mind. And I think this largely clears the pathway for a Kelly Loeffler return or a Doug Collins nomination to the United States Senate. Because enough about Perdue, and while this video is going to be diving back to what Perdue's recount of running for the election and his statements about keeping his options open means for the state of Georgia, I think it could also indicate that the GOP is trying to rally around one candidate and they are pressuring people from remaining out of the race, including David Perdue and potentially Kelly Loeffler. So looking back at the 2020 election results, this is 2020, not 2021. The 2020 election results between this Georgia Senate special election, David Perdue was not on the ballot, so that's why you will not see his name. He was on a different ballot. We will look at his election briefly and look at this special election. Kelly Loeffler was the appointed incumbent, so she had never won a statewide race in Georgia before, and she only received 26% of the vote. If you're wondering how we ended up with Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler as the two candidates in the runoff election, Georgia has a jungle primary system, the system that has been put in place in order to prevent black candidates from doing well in the state, historically speaking. And looking at what happened here, despite Warnock and Loeffler getting less than a third of the vote each, they ended up going off into a runoff election in January where voters would be forced to decide. There was no writing in. There was no third-party candidates in the runoff. It is strictly the top two contenders. So a jungle primary is this process. Every political party runs together. And in this situation, it is possible for two Democrats to be on the ballot to lock out the Republicans, or two Republicans to be on the ballot to lock out the Democrats. But it ended up with a Democrat versus a Republican, and ultimately ended up with Loeffler versus Warnock. And of course, we all know that Warnock won. But Doug Collins, the reason why I'm showing you these numbers is because Doug Collins came close. He only ran behind Kelly Loeffler by around 6 percentage points. He came close to winning the Senate special election in Georgia. I honestly think that if he was the nominee and not Loeffler, that the Republicans would have had done a better job against Warnock. Do I think that they would have won? Probably not in hindsight, but then I probably would have estimated that Doug Collins would have done better than Loeffler, to say the least. But looking at this in 20%, he didn't even crack 1 million votes, but he definitely is the runner-up. He's the next highest Republican, going all the way down to Derek Grayson, who got just 1% of the vote. I mean, Doug Collins was the alternative to Kelly Loeffler, but it seems as if that 1/4 of the electorate, the solid Trump base in Georgia, ultimately was too much for Doug Collins to overcome. Kelly Loeffler spent her entire campaign talking about how she was the pro-Trump candidate. She touted her 100% Trump voting history, something that many senators did not have. Even staunch Republicans voted against him in one way or another. Kelly Loeffler 100% of the time backed President Trump and his agenda. Doug Collins would have offered a more moderate, more conservative voice, but now he's gone full to the Trump wing as well, looking for his endorsement entering into 2022. But Kelly Loeffler looking as well also indicates that 2022 could still be a bloodbath in the United States Senate Republican primary. Now that David Perdue is out, we probably won't see a matchup between Kelly Loeffler and Perdue, which would honestly be worse than a matchup between Collins and Loeffler, because that has happened before. But Perdue and Loeffler have heavily campaigned together, so that'd be much different than if it was just Collins versus Loeffler in a rematch again. But we could actually end up in that scenario. And that now that David Perdue is actually leaving, and I want to point out that Perdue is probably one of the stronger GOP candidates, but not the strongest. I think that a Republican could win in 2022 and do better than David Perdue might, but you still also have to recognize that, had 2021 not been that anti-Republican year that it was, or the anti-Republican election that it was, right before the Capitol insurrection with Donald Trump refusing to accept the election results. I mean, thinking about the circumstances, well, I understand why David Perdue was ousted. But let's take a look at his election history. He was actually first elected back in 2014. He won by a pretty considerable amount. Now, I understand that the margin was close for a red wave year, but he still won by 7 percentage points. That's larger than Donald Trump's victory was in 2016. So that means the swing was even larger from 2014 to 2021. But heading into the 2020 United States Senate election in Georgia, Jon Ossoff certainly gave him a run for his money, literally. I mean, $100 million across both sides. On top of that, ended up defeating him. And, looking at Perdue's election performance, the surprising thing is he's the one leaving the race when Loeffler lost by a larger amount. And I think this also just indicates that they might be clearing the field here, because Perdue, at least compared to Loeffler, should not have been the one to remove himself from the race, or herself, in the case of Loeffler. He certainly should not have been the one to leave, because he's honestly, he did well. He lost, and the state swung by around 9 points, but he was still able to do better than Kelly Loeffler. And, comparatively, I would say he did just as well, actually, as Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, he still ended up short. And I understand why they wouldn't want him there. But if Perdue's being pressured out, and honestly, I think that's exactly what happened. The Georgia GOP is in shambles. You can't deny that. Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger are on another spectrum compared to Donald Trump and David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins. And the problem is they all supported Trump in 2020. They all had the same type of ideologies and still do, just that divide within the party ultimately has crippled the Georgia GOP from having a leader that can represent all of their values, which is exactly why they faltered immediately after the 2020 election, when Georgia runoffs have never favored the Democratic Party in the entire 21st century. We've literally never seen it happen before 2021. So looking at what's happening now with Perdue, I honestly think we could see a headline in the future talking about Loeffler being forced to drop out and just remain on this Stacey Abrams-esque type of strategy for the state of Georgia entering into 2022. And the harsh scenario is that, if she refuses, and honestly, she has the money to run. David Perdue is rich, but he's not as rich as Kelly Loeffler. She has the money to self-fund a campaign and put her name on the ballot to be competitive in the primary. Honestly, she does. She doesn't have to listen to the statewide GOP, whereas David Perdue certainly has been a little bit more understanding and aware of the conservative cause, because he tried to shift towards the center, but honestly, with Trump's rhetoric, it was too much for Perdue to overcome. Loeffler just doubled down on a losing strategy. I mean, why would you double down after Donald Trump just lost the state? Honestly, we will never know, because she's not going to be in the Senate. But looking at what could happen in 2022, at the end of the day, this just seems like a clearing of the field type thing, and I'm honestly very surprised that David Perdue, being the only Republican to file paperwork, major Republican to file paperwork at least, is no longer running for Senate. And this comes after a week after his announcement. I mean, it's very interesting, but also in a way I'm not surprised. If they truly want to win this race in 2022, they need to pressure both Loeffler and David Perdue out, but not to say both of them would lose necessarily. I mean, I think they would lose, but I don't think that it would be completely unrealistic to see how they could win depending on the circumstance of 2022. But I do think that another Republican would be better, another statewide Republican. Looking at the potential list here, we have a number of people that are recognizable names, people that have been elected statewide, people that are known, people that could, that are highly favored within the Republican Party in Georgia. I think Doug Collins might be the shoo-in, but we still have to see what happens in the governorship, because Brian Kemp is more than likely going to either be primaried or defeated in the general election. Either way, the GOP loses. But looking at who Trump backs, it's not going to be Brian Kemp. It's going to be someone else. We still have to decide. Is it going to be Doug Collins in the Senate, or is it going to be Doug Collins in the governor election? And, just a little bit of flashback about this Senate race. This 2022 Senate race up actually was very solid for the GOP in 2016. While Donald Trump won the state by 5 points, Johnny Isakson won this Senate race by 14 percentage points. He was able to win a lot of counties in the Atlanta metro area a lot better. The Democrats did not a lot better than Republicans did in 2021. Looking at these results, he was able to do very well, decisively, split the black vote down to the Republicans and the Democrats. Not enough to win it, obviously, but still enough to be a 14-point margin of victory on the same ballot that Donald Trump won by 5 points. Not even 6 years later, literally not even 6 years later. We're talking 4 years, 4 years and 2 months. The state of Georgia, this Senate race that was 14 points for the Republican Party in 2016, went to the Democrats by 2 points in 2021. So at the end of the day, this is just more discourse for our Georgia Senate election races. This is going to be one of the closely watched Senate races in the 2022 midterm elections. The balance of power ultimately comes down to each individual state. Georgia will matter more than ever. Pennsylvania will matter more than ever. Wisconsin will matter more than ever. Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina. Competitive races, all it takes is one in either direction to solidify the Democratic majority beyond Joe Manchin, or add to the Republican Party's number and put them in the majority. All it takes is one seat to fundamentally change the way the Senate maneuvers. One seat in the Senate elections. The Republicans just need one. If they get it in Georgia, I can see why they are trying to pressure these candidates out. Because if they lost before, they know they're not going to win again. Perfect examples are Martha McSally and John James. While they may have been able to do better in 2020 than they did in 2018, is not enough. It is not enough. And also, the 2021 runoffs are much closer than, not much closer, but a little bit closer. Year-wise, it's just going to be an ad saying, we rejected David Perdue a year ago. Why is he running again? This Senate race, these Senate races in 2022 are going to come down to the wire. And I think Georgia will be amongst one of the closest states. But it will be difficult for the GOP to win if they just rerun the same old candidates. They need someone inspiring, but they also need to be able to balance the support from the Trump voters, the support from the Romney voters, the support from the McCain voters, and turn the state back to the Republican Party. Can it be done through Kelly Loeffler and her new style of campaigning? If she chooses to run, probably not. If she doesn't choose to run and she's still able to funnel $100 million into the Senate race, it could actually turn red. It ultimately comes down to what these candidates are going to do. But you do have to realize, now that David Perdue is out, this is clearing the pathway. We don't know for who yet. It could be Loeffler. It could be Collins. But the fact he's doing this just a week after really is an indicator that the Georgia GOP is trying to field a strong candidate. If not, it could just be that David Perdue all of a sudden changed his mind. But considering someone who had a less accepting result of the election in terms of his statement than Kelly Loeffler, which was honestly a very big surprise. And as someone who was just elected, I mean, he's not done in the Senate. He might try to run for something else, but it looks as if he's not running for Senate. So we will see what happens over the next few weeks, few months. We will track who is going to be running, who is going to take this place, who is going to turn this seat red. We don't know yet, but I think this is a very big indicator that the GOP has something in the works. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.